You missed another one of Jake's games last night. My name is Lucas Reed. I'm 45 years old and I've been operating heavy machinery for Hologate Systems in Kansas City for the past 18 years. Started as a crane operator when I was fresh out of high school, worked my way up to site supervisor. Built half the office buildings in this city with my own hands. But lately, something felt terribly wrong at home. My wife Amanda had been acting different for months. Cold, distant, like she was looking right through me when I walked through the door after 12-hour shifts. The kids seemed to pick up on it too. Jake, my 16-year-old, barely made eye contact anymore. My daughter, Emma, 14, spent most of her time locked in her bedroom. I told you I had to finish the Henderson project, I said, hanging my hard hat on the kitchen hook. You know how important that contract is. Amanda didn't look up from her phone. Jake scored the winning goal. Coach says he might get a scholarship if he keeps this up. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Missing my son's games wasn't something I wanted to do, but keeping food on the table and a roof over our heads required sacrifices. Amanda used to understand that. Hell, she used to be proud of the work I did. I'll make it to the next one, I said. She finally looked at me then, and something in her eyes made my blood run cold. It wasn't anger or disappointment. It was pity. Will you? She asked. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Amanda slept with her back turned to me. We hadn't touched in months. Hadn't really talked in longer than that. I kept telling myself it was just a rough patch. Married couples went through these things. We'd been together since college, married for 19 years. We'd built a life together. But when I got up for my morning coffee and found Amanda whispering into her phone in the laundry room, hanging up the second she saw me, that knot in my stomach turned into something else entirely. Who was that? I asked. Work stuff, she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Amanda worked part-time at a local dental office. They didn't call employees at 6 o'clock in the morning for work stuff. I grabbed my thermos and headed for the door. See you tonight. Actually, she said, and I stopped. I'm having dinner with my sister. Don't wait up. Her sister lived in Topeka, 2 hours away, for a Tuesday night dinner. I nodded and walked out to my truck, but something had shifted. The foundation I thought we'd built together suddenly felt like it was cracking underneath my feet. Amanda and I met at the University of Kansas 23 years ago. She was studying dental hygiene. I was in construction management before I dropped out junior year to take care of my sick father. She stuck by me through that rough time even when money was tight and I was working double shifts just to keep his medical bills from drowning us. We got married young, had Jake when I was 26. Emma came 2 years later. For a long time, we were solid. Amanda understood that construction work meant long hours, especially during busy seasons. She supported my decision to take the job with Hologate Systems, even though it meant relocating from Lawrence to Kansas City. I'd worked my way up the ranks, honestly. Started operating cranes, then became a foreman, then site supervisor. The Henderson project was the biggest contract Hologate had ever landed, a 30-story office complex downtown. If we pulled it off on time and under budget, it could set us up for years. But somewhere along the way, Amanda stopped asking about my work. Stopped caring when I came home covered in concrete dust and exhausted. She started making plans that didn't include me. Girls' nights out, weekend trips to see her family, evening classes at the community college. The warning signs had been there for months, but I'd been too busy to notice them clearly. Phone calls that ended when I walked into the room. New clothes that she claimed came from clearance sales, but the tag said otherwise. A sudden interest in working out and getting her hair done more often. Last month, I'd found a receipt in her purse while looking for my reading glasses. Dinner for two at Romano's, the expensive Italian place downtown. $58. I asked her about it, and she said she'd taken her friend Lauren there for her birthday. But Lauren lived in Wichita now, had for 3 years. The biggest red flag came 2 weeks ago when Jake asked me why Mom was always on the phone with that man from work. When I pressed him for details, he clammed up. Said he didn't want to get anyone in trouble. Amanda's behavior around the kids had changed too. She'd started making comments about how hard I worked, but not in a supportive way, more like she was planting seeds. Your father's never home, she'd say. He cares more about those buildings than he does about us. That wasn't true. And it hurt to hear. Everything I did was for them. Every extra hour, every weekend shift, every time I came home so tired I could barely eat dinner. It was all to give my family the life they deserved. But Amanda was rewriting our history, making me the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. The moment everything became clear happened on a Thursday afternoon in October. I'd left the job site early because we were ahead of schedule on the Henderson project, and I wanted to surprise the family by picking up Jake from football practice myself. I pulled into our driveway and saw a car I didn't recognize parked across the street, a blue sedan with rental plates. Strange, but not alarming. I walked into the house through the garage and heard voices coming from the living room. Amanda's laugh, the real one she used to save for me, not the polite one she'd been using lately. I stopped in the hallway and listened. "The kids will be home soon," Amanda was saying. "I know," a man's voice replied. "I just needed to see you. It's been too long." My chest tightened. I recognized that voice, though it took me a moment to place it. Marcus Walsh, Amanda's high school boyfriend, the one she'd dated all through senior year before we met in college. "We can't keep doing this," Amanda said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "You said you were going to tell him," Marcus replied. "It's been 6 months, Amanda. I'm tired of waiting." 6 months. The timeline hit me like a sledgehammer. 6 months ago was when Amanda had started acting different. When the late-night phone calls began. When she'd started criticizing me in front of the kids. I stood frozen in that hallway listening to my wife discuss our marriage with another man like it was a business transaction that needed to be dissolved. "It's complicated," Amanda said. "Lucas is not a bad man. He's never here. The kids barely know him anymore." That was a lie. And she knew it. I might work long hours, but I'd never missed a birthday. Never failed to help with homework when I was home. Never stopped trying to be the father and husband they needed. "You deserve better," Marcus said. "We both know that." I heard movement in the living room and quietly backed toward the garage. My hands were shaking as I started my truck and drove around the block, giving Marcus time to leave before I came back. When I returned 20 minutes later, Amanda was in the kitchen making dinner like nothing had happened. She smiled at me, that fake smile I'd been getting for months, and asked how my day went. I told her it was fine and went upstairs to change clothes. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at our wedding photo on the dresser. 19 years of marriage, 2 kids, a house we bought together, a life we'd built from nothing, and she was ready to throw it all away for her high school sweetheart. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. I just sat there and let the reality sink in. Then I picked up my phone and made a call to my buddy James, who happened to be a private investigator. 3 weeks after discovering Marcus in my living room, I decided to test the waters. James had already provided me with some preliminary evidence. Photos of Amanda and Marcus meeting at various restaurants around the city. Records of phone calls between them dating back 8 months. But I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't just confront Amanda with accusations. I needed her to reveal her hand first. The opportunity came when she announced another dinner with her sister in Topeka on a Friday night. "I might stay over," she said, not looking up from her laptop. "Drive back Saturday morning. Melissa's been going through a rough time with her divorce." Melissa had been divorced for 3 years. Her rough time was long over. "Sounds good," I said. "I'll take the kids to dinner and a movie." Amanda seemed surprised by how easily I accepted her story. "Really? You're not going to complain about me being gone? You deserve time with your family," I said. "I'll hold down the fort here." That Friday, I dropped Jake off at his friend's house for a sleepover and took Emma to her grandmother's for the weekend. Then I drove to the parking lot across from the Marriott downtown and waited. Amanda's car arrived at 7 p.m. She walked into the hotel lobby wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. 5 minutes later, Marcus's rental car pulled up. He was taller than I remembered from high school, graying at the temples, wearing an expensive suit. They embraced in the lobby like lovers who'd been apart for months, not like old friends catching up. I took pictures, documented everything. Then I went home and waited. Amanda returned Saturday afternoon with stories about Melissa's problems and how exhausting it had been to provide emotional support all night. She even had a gift bag from a boutique in Topeka as proof of her trip. "How was your evening with the kids?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "We missed you." That Sunday, I decided to push a little harder. Over breakfast, I brought up our financial situation. "I've been thinking," I said. "Maybe it's time we looked into refinancing the house. Interest rates are good right now." Amanda's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Why would we do that?" "Free up some equity. Maybe take a vacation as a family. Jake will be graduating in 2 years. We should spend more time together while we can." She sat down her cup and looked at me like I'd suggested we burn the house down. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said carefully. "The mortgage is fine as it is. But if we're planning for the future, Lucas," her voice was sharp now. I said, "No." The kids looked up from their breakfast, sensing the tension. Amanda forced a smile and softened her tone. "We can talk about it later," she said. But we never did talk about it later because that afternoon Amanda announced she was going to visit a lawyer about updating our wills. Said it was something responsible couples did. I knew better. She wasn't updating our wills. She was preparing for divorce. That evening, after the kids went to bed, I found Amanda on the phone again. This time, I listened from outside the bedroom door. "He's getting suspicious," she was saying. "Today he wanted to refinance the house like he knows something." Marcus's voice was muffled through the phone, but I caught enough to understand. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning my exit from the family. Marcus lived in Denver now, ran some kind of consulting business, had money, could provide Amanda with the lifestyle she apparently felt she deserved. "I need more time," Amanda said. "I want to make sure I get custody in the house. Lucas might fight for the kids if he thinks he has a chance. The house we bought together. The kids I'd raised from birth." She was planning to take everything and paint me as the absent father who'd never been there for his family. I went downstairs and poured myself a beer, my first drink in months. Then I called James and told him to accelerate the investigation. James's full report arrived the following Wednesday, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Amanda and Marcus hadn't just reconnected 6 months ago. They'd been in contact on and off for 3 years. Social media messages, emails, occasional phone calls whenever Marcus was in town for business. The affair had started in earnest last spring when Marcus moved his consulting firm to Kansas City. He'd rented an apartment downtown just 15 minutes from our house. The same downtown where I was building the Henderson project, ironically enough. But the most damaging revelation came from Marcus's financial records, which James had obtained through contacts in Denver. Marcus wasn't just planning to support Amanda after our divorce. He'd already been doing it. The new clothes, the expensive dinners, even the community college classes Amanda had been taking. Marcus was footing the bill for everything. There were bank records showing regular transfers from Marcus's account to a credit card Amanda had opened without my knowledge. Thousands of dollars over the past 8 months. Money she'd been spending while letting me believe we were struggling financially while I worked overtime and weekends to keep us afloat. The private investigator had also uncovered something else. Amanda had already consulted with a divorce attorney. Not just consulted, she'd retained him. A high-powered family law specialist who specialized in maximizing settlements for spurned wives. The attorney's name was William Hendricks, and according to James' research, his strategy was always the same. Paint the husband as an absent, uncaring father who'd neglected his family for work. Then push for full custody and maximum alimony based on the husband's earning potential. Amanda had been setting me up for months, building a case against me with every missed dinner, every weekend I worked, every time she criticized me in front of Jake and Emma. She was creating a narrative that would justify taking everything. The most gut-wrenching part was discovering that she'd been coaching the kids. James had copies of text messages between Amanda and her sister Melissa discussing how to help the children understand that their father prioritized work over family. How to document instances of my neglect for the custody hearing. Jake's sudden distance made sense now. Emma's withdrawal. They weren't just picking up on tension between their parents. They were being systematically turned against me by their own mother. But James had saved the worst for last. Marcus Walsh wasn't just a successful consultant. He was married, had been for 15 years. His wife lived in Denver with their 2 children, completely unaware that her husband was financing another woman's divorce in Kansas City. Marcus was playing both sides, promising Amanda a future together while maintaining his own family as a backup plan. And Amanda was either too blind to see it or too desperate to care. I set down the report and walked out to my truck. For 20 minutes, I just sat there in the driveway, staring at the house I'd thought was my home. The windows of my children's bedrooms, the front door I'd painted 3 years ago on a weekend when Amanda had complained it looked shabby. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built was about to be stolen from me by the woman I'd loved for more than half my life. But I wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. I pulled out my phone and called my own attorney. Not some divorce specialist, but the family lawyer who'd handled my father's estate. Robert Hayes was honest, thorough, and had no patience for games. "Robert," I said when he answered, "I need to see you tomorrow and bring your toughest contract lawyer with you." Robert Hayes listened to my story without interruption, occasionally taking notes as I laid out James' evidence across his conference table. The photos, the financial records, the communication logs between Amanda and Marcus. "This is comprehensive," he said finally. "Your wife has definitely been planning this for some time, but the good news is she's made several crucial mistakes." He pointed to the bank record showing Marcus's payments to Amanda's secret credit card. "This is dissipation of marital assets," Robert explained. "She's been using money from an undisclosed relationship to finance a lifestyle you weren't aware of. That alone could significantly impact any settlement." "What about custody?" I asked. That was my biggest fear. The evidence of parental alienation is strong. Those text messages between your wife and her sister discussing how to document your supposed neglect, that's going to backfire on her badly. Judges don't look kindly on parents who manipulate children against the other parent. Robert's associate, a sharp woman named Patricia Voss, leaned forward. "We need to be strategic about timing. If your wife has already retained Hendricks, she's probably planning to file soon. We need to file first and control the narrative." "What do you mean?" "We file for divorce based on adultery and request temporary custody," Patricia explained. "Then we present all this evidence in our initial filing. Put your wife on the defensive from day one instead of letting her paint you as the villain." Robert nodded. "We also need to address the financial aspect. If Marcus Walsh is married, his wife deserves to know what her husband has been doing with their money. That could complicate his ability to support your wife's legal strategy." Over the next 2 weeks, we prepared our case meticulously. James continued surveillance, documenting Amanda's meetings with Marcus and her visits to Hendricks's office. Robert and Patricia crafted a filing that laid out every detail of Amanda's deception and financial misconduct. The most important element was protecting my relationship with Jake and Emma. Robert suggested we request immediate mediation to address the parental alienation issue with a court-appointed counselor to evaluate the children's statements about their home life. "Your wife has been poisoning them against you," Patricia said. "But kids are smarter than adults give them credit for. If a professional counselor asks the right questions, the truth will come out." Meanwhile, I had to continue living in the house with Amanda, pretending I didn't know about her affair or her legal plans. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Coming home every evening and making small talk with the woman who was systematically destroying our family. But I used the time to my advantage. I started spending more deliberate time with Jake and Emma, asking about their lives, their friends, their plans for the future. I made sure to be present for every conversation, every homework session, every ride to practice. Amanda noticed the change and seemed nervous about it. "You're home early again," she said one evening when I arrived in time for dinner. "The Henderson project is running ahead of schedule," I said. "I want to enjoy this time with the family before we start the next big contract." Jake looked up from his homework. "Are you going to be around more, Dad?" "I'm going to try," I said, meeting his eyes. "I know I've been working too much lately. I want to change that." Amanda's face went pale. Her whole strategy depended on me being the absent father. If I was suddenly present and engaged, her narrative fell apart. That night, I heard her on the phone with Marcus again, but this time her voice was panicked. "Something's changed," she whispered. "He's acting different. What if he knows?" I filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. just as Amanda was dropping Emma off at school. By the time she returned home, a process server was waiting in our driveway with papers that would change everything. I was at the Henderson job site when she called, her voice shaking with rage and panic. "What the hell is this, Lucas? You filed for divorce." "I did," I said calmly, stepping away from my crew. "I'm done pretending, Amanda." "Pretending what? I don't understand." "Marcus Walsh," I said, and the line went silent. "The Marriott downtown. 8 months of secret credit card payments. Your meetings with William Hendricks." Should I continue? When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to document everything. The financial fraud, the parental alienation, the adultery, it's all in the filing." "Lucas, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but you made choices, Amanda, and now you're going to live with the consequences." I hung up and turned off my phone. By noon, Patricia called to tell me that Hendricks had requested an emergency meeting. Amanda's carefully planned strategy had collapsed in a single morning. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Friday. Amanda showed up with Hendricks, looking pale and defeated. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. Patricia had confirmed that his wife in Denver had been notified of the affair and had frozen their joint accounts. Judge Martinez reviewed our evidence with growing disapproval, the photos, the financial records, the text messages about coaching the children against me. When she read the transcript of Amanda discussing how to document my neglect, her expression turned cold. "Mrs. Reed," the judge said finally, "this court takes parental alienation very seriously. The evidence suggests you've been deliberately undermining your children's relationship with their father while conducting an extramarital affair funded by your paramour." Amanda started to speak, but Hendricks put a hand on her arm to stop her. "Temporary custody will be awarded to Mr. Reed," Judge Martinez continued. "Mrs. Reed will have supervised visitation pending a full custody evaluation. This court also finds evidence of dissipation of marital assets and orders an immediate accounting of all undisclosed financial activity." Amanda moved out of the house that weekend, staying with her sister while her world continued to crumble. Marcus had disappeared entirely. His wife had filed for divorce in Denver, and his consulting business was under investigation for financial irregularities. The custody evaluation took 6 weeks, during which Jake and Emma lived with me full-time without Amanda's constant manipulation. They gradually opened up about the pressure they'd felt to criticize me, how confused they'd been by their mother's behavior. "I knew something was wrong," Jake told me one evening while we worked on his college applications. "Mom kept asking weird questions about whether you loved us, whether you cared more about work than family. It felt like she wanted me to say bad things about you." Emma was more direct. "I saw her with that man once at the mall. They were holding hands. I didn't know what to do." The final divorce settlement was devastating for Amanda. She received minimal alimony, no claim to my pension or business assets, and only limited visitation with the children. Hendricks had withdrawn from the case after the judge sanctioned him for failing to investigate his client's misconduct. Amanda found work as a dental hygienist in Topeka, living in a small apartment and driving a used car. Her dreams of a wealthy new life with Marcus had evaporated along with her marriage. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was promoted to project manager at Hollowgate Systems. The Henderson building was completed ahead of schedule and under budget, leading to 3 new contracts for the company. Jake received his football scholarship to Kansas State. Emma joined the debate team and started talking about studying law. Standing in the shadow of the building I'd helped create, watching my son throw passes in his first college practice, I realized that some foundations are stronger than others. The ones built on honesty and hard work don't crumble when the storms hit. They just get stronger. Amanda faced the consequences of her betrayal every day. Financially ruined, professionally humiliated, and estranged from the children she tried to turn against me. Marcus's wife had taken everything in their divorce, and his business never recovered from the scandal. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their choices.